Previously on the Fanboys.
It was just the type of game that they were losing, and for them to go out there and win that is just huge.
Is there a better slate of names in any sport than in hockey?
I mean, Alexander Radulov is an awesome name.
A Radulov. I mean, that sounds like some type of Thor movie type shit.
Now can you beat the teams you're supposed to beat? They got Baylor this upcoming week.
I really do think LSU at home is going to take down Georgia.
I would not want to meet Oklahoma again in a Big 12 championship because I never want to see Kyler Murray again unless he's playing baseball.
Our first actual game, good or not? Get off my lawn, you big stinker.
The actual fight of Khabib and McGregor, I thought Khabib won, pretty convincingly. I thought it was a battle of which coaching staff could do a worse job. And
impressively,
Jason Garrett and Scott Linehan won that battle. It's about the only thing they win. I literally said at halftime of that game, I was like, if you brought in Sean McVay or Nagy from the Bears right now and literally taught the team 5 plays, just 5 plays at halftime, they would score more points in that second half than they probably have on the road the entire season.
We are the Fanboys. We are fans talking as fans for you, the fans, and we have an excellent episode for you. Episode 8 is on its way, and Jake, we're going to be talking, since SC football's on a bye, we're going to be talking some SC soccer, maybe a little bit of volleyball as well, just a little bit, and then we are going to do our college and NFL takeaways as we do every week. We're going to start the show off with our top 5 favorite quarterbacks of all time, not necessarily who we think is the best, just our favorites. Let's get that straight right now, and then of course we have our talking points throughout the show, and then we are going to end the show with the second segment with Jake's film session. He's going to spotlight one player from the Dallas Cowboys. I won't name who that is until the moment arises, but Jake, let's get this thing started. And yes, SC football is on a bye, but that doesn't mean we are going to stop talking about SC. We are actually going to talk about their other fall sports, which is soccer and volleyball. And soccer, Jake, a pretty great accomplishment, has the most amount of wins and in program history this season. No matter how you spin it, no matter how you say it, that's an impressive feat.
Yeah, no, and again, we've talked about it when we talked about soccer in the past. Is they're moving in the right direction, and that's a huge step. They got a lot more talent on the field. They hung in there with the number 2 team in the nation, Oklahoma Wesleyan. I definitely think you have to be pretty confident right now if you're sitting in that athletic director position that you have the right guy as the head coach of your soccer program to get them to where they can compete for that mainly that top 2 in the KCAC, because Oklahoma Wesleyan's pretty much at the top of the nation every year, but that's a huge step in trying to get a program that's never really had any history to it to finally start to get some buzz around it.
Yeah, and Jake, they've really been on an island of identity loss. Like, they don't really have an identity. They've been lost at sea. They've never really been able to kind of put their feet in the ground and say, this is who we are. This is what we want to do. This is how we're going to do it. And this year you can finally see that in the program. And it starts off with some building blocks of some young players that have been able to stay there, that they've been able to retain. It was never getting talent was the problem. It was having that talent stay and continue to play for the program. And they finally got that in some kids. And they finally have some upperclassmen that they can rely on with some leadership roles. And but yes, now when you hear this, it may not sound like a big deal, but it is a big deal. And we will say their record. They are 8-5. And that is the most amount of wins they've had in a single season in program history, and that goes to show you where they're coming from.
Right, yeah, and I think it's kind of like you said the other week, where it was just a case that the coach needed to get his guys in the program before he could run the system that he wanted to run.
Right,
and I definitely think it's, if that is the case, it's really starting to show, because the results are there, and you can't deny results. And now for them, it's going to be see how they can finish out this year, and then get some big momentum going into an off season where you play better. You should get better recruits. you should be able to improve, year in, year out. And, I mean, you just slowly turn around that program, kind of like Matt O'Brien did with the basketball team over the last 4 or 5 years. All of a sudden, you can be a powerhouse in the KCAC and even nationally.
Yeah, and Jake, and another thing is that has always been a problem with this SC soccer team is that they've never been able to score, or especially score consistently. Sometimes whenever you see them win a game once in a blue moon in the past, the score was 1-0, or they won 2-1 in overtime, or it was just something like, geez, snooze fest, come on, wake up. They're beating teams this year 8-1. They're beating teams 3-0. I mean, they have dominated some games 5-0, 8-0. I mean, they have been able to put the ball in the back of the net, and that's always a fun brand of soccer to watch.
Yeah, and again, I think that has to do with the coach getting guys that he wanted in the program, the type of athletes he needed to perform a system, whereas before they were just kind of running a system to not get blown out. I remember watching games where it was like, they weren't really trying to score. And I remember talking to some of the players, and they're just like, yeah, we're not necessarily trying to score a bunch of goals. We're just trying to hang in there in games, maybe steal a win or two, because we know we're not as talented as these other teams. And for them to be able to now start to kind of flip the switch and really go for an attacking style is definitely big for them, and it's going to be something fun to keep up with as this year moves forward, and then especially heading into next year to see if they can start to put some stuff consistently, because I know they got a lot of young guys that they really like, and they're a pretty young team, so this success could really blossom into something more if they can retain that talent and then continue the momentum moving forward.
Yeah, and Jake, I'll end it off with this one. And yes, this is a loss, but this is probably the best loss I've ever seen. And I know that doesn't make sense, and I've always hated the term, a good loss or a moral victory, whatever it is. But this one really is. It truly is, coming from where Southwestern has been in the past and what I've seen them play soccer and where they are this season. They lost to Oklahoma Wesleyan, Jake, who's ranked number 2 in the nation and obviously number 1 in the KCAC, but they're number 2 in the entire nation of NAIA soccer. They lost to them 2-0 in Winfield. And, that's a team that was up 7-0 at halftime in years past. I mean, it wasn't even close. They couldn't even sniff the same field. And this year they held them to only winning 2-0, which means they put up a fight and they put up a good game against them.
Yeah, no, and also kind of, along with that, and I just completely lost my train of thought. I had something along to go with that. I forgot it.
Did you?
Well, yeah, I did, but I lost it, and, I'm just not going to regain that.
Yeah,
I got distracted by the Astros game in my defense.
In your defense, and yeah, I'm with you. I'm turning away from the mic too, so you're probably not, like, whenever I go back and listen to this, it's probably because I keep turning around to check the TV, which is behind me.
Yep,
but
I'm in the same exact situation.
So we're probably going to be having our audio all over the place. We apologize to you in advance for that. But volleyball schedule, Jake, just a quick shout out to the girls there at SC playing volleyball. 17-9 this year, 3-3 in the KCAC. They're 8-5 at home, which is a pretty good record. They would like it to be a little bit better. They have lost 2 straight recently, has the volleyball team, but one was to Ottawa, who's receiving votes, and St. Mary, who's always a pretty solid volleyball program. But they do have at Oklahoma Wesleyan. Actually, they have that tonight, and that game's going on right now. So we don't have an update on it because they haven't updated it yet online, but they are playing right now currently. So who knows what's going on there, but unless you are in Stewart Fieldhouse.
17 wins is something they haven't even got to in total in years past. So
yes,
that's a big step for this program, and it's just we've talked about it, episode in and episode out, how promising it is that all of these fall sports are really stepping up, not just football, but soccer and volleyball. I mean, these are programs that struggled when we were there. Fall sports was always just kind of on the
we
back
waited
burner.
for basketball.
Yeah, it
Waited
was
for basketball
always
season.
waiting for basketball season, and now we have some great success from these sports and a reason to watch them. And I know the football games, the student sections have been a lot better, and volleyball always has a great student section, and hopefully soccer can start to gain some more attention. It's a little bit harder with soccer in Kansas, of course, just because not many people pay attention to soccer. But I think if this team starts doing well, maybe they can get some more students out there. And so it's fun to see, our college finally start to really step it up in some sports where they struggled while we were there.
Yes. Yeah, and I couldn't have said it any better myself, Jake. I think you wrapped it up pretty well there, and it's always been let's wait till the spring, let's wait till track season, let's wait till cross-country season gets going for nationals, because we've always succeeded there. We've always had a really good track team, track and field, and then we've always had a solid basketball program, whether it be on the women's side or the men's side. Actually, it's a pretty fun stat that Southwestern fans like to throw out there, is that Southwestern is they've had 5 years in a row now of both the men's and the women's basketball team making the KCAC championship game 4 years in a row, which is impressive. So, that's one of the two teams, not both at the same time, but one of the two teams representing the KCAC in the KCAC championship game in basketball season.
Yeah, and we'll talk a lot about the basketball team, I'm sure, during basketball season, because we both know a lot of the guys on the team. We both know Coach O'Brien really well. We'll hopefully have Coach O'Brien on the show, so that'll be something.
He has agreed to an interview.
Yes.
It just will be in the makings at some point closer to basketball season.
And yes, that should be a really fun time as well, because I know we both followed the basketball team religiously whenever we were in school.
Right, and pick number 2, Jake, I don't know if you saw this, pick number 2 to finish in the KCAC. I thought that was kind of bullshit. I still think they're probably number 1. I don't know who got number 1. It's probably Oklahoma Wesleyan.
They are stacked.
I was like, the only team that could compete with Southwestern is Oklahoma Wesleyan and maybe Friends, but that's only because they have the
Murdoch.
Pillsbury Doughboy.
Yeah. No,
but,
I think Oklahoma Wesleyan and Southwestern are going to be top 10 teams in the country this year.
Yeah,
it'll
be fun to watch.
Yeah, the KCAC always does really well at the national tournament, men's basketball. I think this year they got 2 teams who can make a run at the Final Four.
Yeah, Jake, I think you're right. I think they have 2 teams, and Oklahoma Wesleyan, if they have that returning center, that dude who's had a 7'6" wingspan,
Brayman Alexander, the point guard, who's one of the best point guards in the NAIA.
And the combination of that high-low action that they like to establish there at Oklahoma Wesleyan, they're almost impossible to stop when they're hitting on all cylinders. Now, there are times where they play a little off, and you're like, how the hell did they lose that? You see them play their best basketball, and you're like, there's no way they're going to lose. There's no way. And then they'll drop a random game, and it's just kind of weird. But, Jake, let's end it on that note for Talking SC. That is our SC Sports segment. We're going to move on to NCAA. And, Jake, give us your college takeaway of the week.
So this is kind of an interesting take, I'm sure, but I think if Alabama loses a single game this year, they should be disqualified from all postseason play.
Why do you say that?
Especially the play, because they are so good and they are so much better than everyone else and so much more talented that them losing a game would be a crime to themselves. I mean, who in college football realistically can beat Alabama right now? I don't think there's a single team. I really don't think there's anyone.
There's not one team out there that should even really come that close to beating them. And I would say, if you gave me a chance, if I had to put all my money on one team to beat them, it would have to be at LSU at night in Death Valley, and it'd have to be the LSU Tigers.
And I still don't know, because I don't know if I think their defense can actually slow down Tua, and then I know their offense isn't going to light up Alabama.
No, I mean, it's just not. Their offense isn't going to be able to score any, so it would have to be like a couple defensive touchdowns, maybe a special team score, something along those lines to beat Alabama.
Yeah, I pretty much think it'll have to be a team with a super talented quarterback. I think oddly enough, Alabama's a team where you just have to have an offense that can beat their defense and pray to God that you can outscore them, because there is no, we'll just grind it out on offense, try to get a few scores, and then that'll be enough. No, you need to score 40 points to beat this team. And I really do think if Alabama loses a game and they don't win the SEC championship, they really shouldn't be in the playoffs, because it should not be like last year again, where they get a bye week, basically, and get rewarded for not even going to their conference championship. So, but that's a completely different ever subject. But I really do think if that Alabama's that good right now, and another kind of extra point onto this is I do think Alabama will have a fall from grace eventually, because I think recruits are finally going to get sick of Saban's little antics. This year's been worse than others with the whole thing with the reporter, and he's just a dick. I mean, he's just an asshole.
But
teams
and players are always going to want to go play. They're always going to want to go to the next level and play in the NFL. And he basically gives them a free ride ticket to the NFL if they put up with him for about 4 years, maybe 3 if they're good enough. And you get to go to the NFL, and you have to. It's like basically doing your time. Like, you just have to serve your time at Alabama, and you get to win a national championship or 2, maybe even 3. You sit there as a backup for 2 years. You play 2 years for Saban as a starter, and then you're in the NFL.
Yeah, and that could just stay like that until he retires, which will hopefully be soon, because he is actually old. But I just hope. I know they've slipped a little bit in recruiting in the last year or 2, and I'm hoping that starts to catch up to them, because I do think players sooner or later are just like, this guy's kind of a dick. I feel like he'd go to this program that's another top 5 or 10 program and possibly win a title there, and not have a coach that is a complete dick, and we're up by 30 and he screams at us like we're losing, and then we win and he just says that winning is rat poison. Like, sooner or later that should grow old.
Yeah, it should. But speaking of upsetting Alabama, which will probably not happen this year, my college takeaway, Jake, is that it was upset weekend. I mean, how many top 10 teams fell this week? Was it 4 of the top 10 teams that actually lost? It was West Virginia, it was Washington, and Georgia at number 2 called that one, said LSU would win that one, and it was Wisconsin. Well, they weren't top 10. Wisconsin lost, though.
Wisconsin was not.
There was definitely another top 10 team that lost. It was number 9. Who was was it Penn State? Penn State lost to Michigan State.
Oh, yeah. Finally Penn State's dropped a couple games. I never thought they were good this whole season.
Yeah, so, but that could have put Texas. It did not put Texas at number 5, but that Texas had a case to be like number 5 in the country, which would have been insane to even think about saying, which I'm really glad they only moved up, 1 spot? Did they move up to 7 or 8?
They moved up they went from 9, and I'm just going to say AP because who cares about the coaches poll?
Coaches poll doesn't count.
They went from 9 to 7.
To 7.
And
and
basically,
which I think is right. I think is right.
The only 1-loss teams in the country who are ahead of them are LSU and Michigan, and I can't really argue with either of those being ahead of them. So, I mean, I'm happy with where Texas is. I'm just happy that they were able to win a game where they really went through some adversity against a team they were favored to beat, losing a starting quarterback. I thought that was big for them to hold on to that game. It wasn't the prettiest win, but good teams find ugly ways to win.
No, you're exactly right. But upset weekend, a crazy weekend in college football. And, Jake, I think it just goes to show kind of on your side of things that there's not a good enough team to beat Bama this year. There just isn't, because there's been so many there's been so much turnaround. There's been so much turnaround throughout the top 10. I mean, it has just recycled over and over and over again, and now you've got Texas in the top 10. I mean, who would have picked that? Who would have projected that at the beginning of the season? I mean, we just don't know what this college season is going to be about. And honestly, I think every team is just fighting to play Bama in the national championship just to lose. Unless Bama, out of nowhere, or Tua gets hurt, or something happens, absurdly crazy happens to Alabama, and they just get upset in the playoff game or something, this upset weekend only proved to me more that Alabama's going to be the national champion.
Yeah, I think Tua has to get hurt for them to lose I just think he's that good. I think if he gets hurt, they drop off more to where they've been in the last few years, which is still really good, though I'd actually say a little worse because their defense isn't as good as it's been. It's still really good, but it's not as good in my opinion. I also don't think they've really played anybody, especially any good offenses. But
for a team that's in the SEC, they sure do have a shitty schedule.
Yeah,
Has anybody noticed that, or am I the only one that notices that Bama, for being in the SEC, doesn't play anybody?
No, to prove my point about their defense, I mean, they gave up 23 to A&M. They gave up 31 to Arkansas. They've given up some points this year a couple times, and the first game of the year against Louisville's turned out to be terrible. Ole Miss, who when they killed, everyone's like, oh, they killed Ole Miss. Ole Miss hasn't been good at all. They beat A&M at home. I mean, that's a game they're just going to win by that score every time, like a 45-23. Then they beat Lafayette, Arkansas, and Missouri, and then this week they're at Tennessee. That's another easy win. But then they got a couple tough games finally with LSU,
they got LSU,
Mississippi State, and then they have the powerhouse of Mississippi State. Has a really good defense this year. They're like the number one defense in the country right now, or something absurd. And then they have the powerhouse of Citadel coming in.
Oh man!
And then
Whoa.
home against
Watch
Auburn.
out for Citadel.
Auburn's not
in
even ranked
Tuscaloosa.
anymore.
Yeah. Oh no, Auburn, dude. Whatever happened to Jared? What's his quarterback?
Stidham?
Did he just fall? Stidham. Did he just fall off the face of the earth?
He's just very average. I mean,
Yeah.
he's not going to go out there and win you the game. Their defense is not as good as it's been in the past. His stats for the year: he's 129 of 213, 1,500 yards. 7 touchdowns, 4 picks. So, I mean, nothing to really go home about, or definitely not to that potential that people have thought he could maybe reach.
No, yeah, people had him Heisman candidate. But Jake, anyway, let's wrap up our college talk. Let's move on to the NFL, and we're probably going to jump back and forth with college and NFL throughout the show. So we'll get more takes and we'll be able to talk a little bit more about it. But let's go ahead and get away with our takeaways right now. Jake, what was your NFL takeaway?
Kind of collectively, I think the AFC kind of stinks. When you look at their top teams, I mean, the top 2 teams right now, I think most people could agree on, is the Chiefs and the Patriots, the matchup we just saw, and both their defenses suck. And
they're both really bad.
Yeah, and then
defensively.
And then, you think the Jaguars have this great defense, but they just got scorched by the Cowboys, and their offense is without Fournette, their offense just really goes down the drain. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I don't know what to think about the Jaguars. The Steelers are dysfunctional, and I don't think they're going to go anywhere. The Bengals will lose in the first round, no matter what their record is. And I think the dark horse of the AFC would be the Baltimore Ravens right now, because they have a pretty good defense, pretty good offense.
Chargers,
and then the Chargers. Those are the only 2 teams. Oddly enough, I think the consensus top 2 is the Chiefs and Patriots, but I don't trust – their defenses are just so bad. I don't trust them in the playoffs. And then how can you trust the Chargers? And then the Ravens have Joe Flacco. I mean, I cannot sort – the NFC, you have the Rams at top, and then you have a bunch of teams that look like they could maybe figure it out. But then in the AFC, I just look across, I'm just like, I have no idea who in the AFC is actually going to be good come playoff time.
Astros just scored. Sorry.
Dang it, I missed it.
Yeah, Astros just scored. But anyway, I think it was Correa had an RBI. But anyway, yeah, Jake, no, I'm with you. I'm with you completely with the AFC. I really do. And, I mean, I know you want to talk a little bit more on the NFC, but I don't know. And I
kind
think
of already
I'm
made
going
my point.
to.
The NFC's just you can see the Rams are the top team. Then you see like the Saints, and then you see just like a bunch of teams who are like their record's not that great right now, but they might figure it out. So in the NFC, there's some
Eagles.
type of structure. Like the Eagles, you would expect to figure it out. We're still waiting to see who a bunch of the other teams are, like the Redskins. We don't really know who they are yet. We have no idea what the Cowboys are. We have no idea what a bunch of these teams in the NFC are, but we have at least a somewhat idea of at least
Carolina. You don't know who they are.
Yeah, you at least have an idea, though, of 4 or 5 teams, what they are. And then you look at the AFC, and you're just like, I guess I would just say the Patriots are going to go to Super Bowl by default, but can you really sit there and just, if you took the logo off their helmet, would you really think that team was going to go to the playoffs with that defense? That defense is worse than last year's defense, and they don't have Matt Patricia anymore, which I think a lot of people forget about.
Yeah, well, take the Patriots and take away what they've done in the past, and just look at them for just this little 6-game sample that you've been able to see them, and leave the Chief game in there, whatever you got to do. But does that look like a Super Bowl team to you?
No, it doesn't even look like an AFC Championship team to me.
But they're going to be in the Super Bowl. I can call it right now.
More than likely, because the Chargers will choke. I really think the only team who would actually, have a chance to compete with them, because I've at least seen them do it once in the near, past, would be the Ravens, and I still don't trust them, but at least I've seen Joe Flacco be able to put a run together, and typically it's the Joe Flaccos and Eli Mannings of the world who give the Patriots a problem.
Yeah, isn't that fucking weird? That is so odd to me that the two quarterbacks to take down the Patriots is Joe Flacco.
It's because of how good
Eli
they can be
Manning.
when they actually play well, which Eli was actually just flat out good for a long time in his career.
Eli for about 6-7 years of his career, right there in the middle, about 3 years into his career, take away the last 3 of his last 3 seasons or whatever, he's been an elite quarterback and a arguably Hall of Fame type quarterback.
Yeah, especially with the 2 Super Bowls, probably a Hall of Fame quarterback. But then Joe Flacco's the real weird one. He had a couple good years, but then he just had that Super Bowl run that was just incredible, and you're like, oh yeah, he's going to be absolutely dominant now. But then he hasn't been able to keep it up. But this year he's actually looking pretty decent.
Yeah, he can't keep it up. Anyway, Jake, I'm going to go to my NFL takeaway. I'm going to go to my takeaway.
For that, Joe.
Why is it that there's no good defense in the NFL anymore? Even the good defenses, quote-unquote good defenses, top-ranked defenses, who was going into this league this season as a top defense? The Jaguars, the Vikings, the Ravens, and then the Rams were supposed to have a great defense this year. And there's good defenses, but there's still the Texans, they're not that great. You look at past defenses like 10 years ago, and I think I know the reason for this is the NFL rulebook tells teams not to play defense anymore. But you look at defenses today and this season, and you can go back even 5 years, they don't even touch some of the defenses from the Broncos or the Seahawks when they were winning their Super Bowls. There's not a defense in the league right now that can even sniff what the Seahawks and Broncos defense did a couple years ago.
I have a counter for you. I actually think there is one defense that you're forgetting about right now.
And don't say Chicago.
No. Chicago has shown some weaknesses, and they just got scorched by Brock Osweiler. I'm not that dumb. But there's one defense this year that if you actually just look at their statistics – and you just kind of forget about it.
Are you going to say the Cowboys?
No. The Cowboys have had a bad game or two. There's one team who's been consistently really good. The Baltimore Ravens. They are only giving up 12.8 points a game. The number 2 team in total defense behind them is Washington, who's given up 20.8. That's not, the Cowboys are giving up less per game. There's some other teams, but no one even comes close to that 12.8. They're only giving up 188 passing yards per game, and they're only giving up 82.8 run yards per game. So they're giving up a grand total of just about 270 yards. And
I'm going to direct you to their schedule. Their schedule also has really sucked, and the one good team that they've played is the Bengals, and they torched them on Thursday Night Football. They absolutely destroyed them, and A.J. Green had like 3 touchdowns and like 200 yards receiving just by himself. So, I mean, I get what you're saying, but like they've also played the Titans and the Bills and like some just shit teams. Like I'm not sold on them until they do it for a full season,
and I can agree with that, but I still think, you can't control what your schedule is.
No, you're right. You play your schedule and you have to.
They did play well against the Steelers, and the Steelers' offense has clicked in some games. But, let's see what they do this week against the Saints. And really, I was just trying to play devil's advocate that, there is one defense that if you just go and look at the stats, you'd be like, wow, they've been dominant. And so it's just kind of to play a counterpoint to it. But I do agree overall with your point that some of those defenses that have looked like the Jaguars have looked great in most of their games defensively, but then they've shown some really bad games, and that's not something even to last year we were accustomed to. But this year I'd say has been there's been some great defensive performances. Like, we've seen the Cowboys have some great defensive performances this year, but there hasn't been a defense that's done it every week consistently.
No.
And the Bears have been great at times too.
There's also just great players. Like, you have a Khalil Mack, who is a game-changing defensive player, a J.J. Watt, who is leading the league in NFL sacks, or leading the NFL in sacks this year. And, which is not that big of a surprise, but where was he the last 2 years? He was on the sideline hurt in the hospital bed or wherever the hell he was. So it's just kind of, you have some of these cool, great performances defensively by certain players. But like you said, there has not been a team that has been able to put it together on a week-to-week basis yet this season. Not one defense, I think, has just had a good season every single game and has played consistently. And I find that odd. Usually there's always one or two just really good defenses in the league, and there's not any of that. And I think it does have something to do with all the rule changes.
Oh, it for sure does. I mean, look at what happened to the Chiefs against the Patriots. Their defender pulled back from getting a sack because he thought maybe Brady threw it, and he didn't want to risk getting the penalty because it was like third down or something on that play where Brady ran it in. There's no question all the rule changes hurt the defenses because on a lot of times when they would be getting a stop, there's some lame penalty called that gives the offense a first down, and then the drive continues. We've seen that happen to the Cowboys a lot this year. We've seen that happen to a lot of defenses this year where normally you would get off the field, and instead they're getting to extend the drive. And when an offense gets more and more plays, more and more chances, sooner or later they're going to break through.
Well, Jake, that's going to do it for our takeaways. We're going to do a new segment today, and it's an all-time favorites list. We're going to do this every single week until about middle of the playoffs. I didn't calculate it exactly when it's going to happen, but it'll be close to postseason play in the NFL. We're doing an all-time favorites list, and we're starting off our all-time favorite list with our top 5 favorite quarterbacks, and it's not who we think is the best quarterbacks of all time. It is our favorite quarterbacks to watch, who we grew up watching and we just idolized as kids or now even. Or just the legends of the game that we always wanted to watch, we've seen highlights of, whatever it is. It's going to be our top 5 quarterbacks, and each week we're going to change the position. So next week we'll go running backs, and then tight ends and wide receivers, offensive linemen, and then we'll do the defensive side of the ball, and all the way up until the playoffs. And it'll be something just fun that we do that kind of leads us up to some NFL postseason play. And Jake, I'm going to let you take the lead on it. Who is your number 5 favorite quarterback?
So my number 5 was Drew Brees, and I tried to keep my list mainly to people that I've watched play. They're any of the old school guys I have on my list are guys who I've seen like full games of just through highlights and stuff. But Drew Brees is at my 5. I mean, he's the all-time leading passer. He was told he was too short in high school to be recruited to college, had to go to Purdue. And, I mean, why would any guy who's going to be a quarterback want to go to Purdue where there's like 2 girls on campus?
Hey, he looks good in gold and black. What can he say?
Yeah, and then he goes to San Diego. They get rid of him. He goes to the Saints, and he wins a Super Bowl for the Saints.
A Super Bowl for the Saints. Yep.
Yeah,
that's all you have to say.
That's all you have to say. And so I love Drew Brees' this whole story. He's always kind of been an underdog, and it's hard not to love Drew Brees.
Yeah, and full disclosure here, Jake, I'm going to go to my number 5, but just for everybody out there listening, it's not different players. We're going to have some of the favorite quarterbacks that are going to be kind of the same.
It's
in fact, we have 3. We have 3 that are actually the same, except they're not in the same spot. But with us both being Cowboy fans, both of us being Longhorn fans, and we've grown up together, it's bound to happen. But my number 5 favorite quarterback of all time is Troy Aikman. I actually did get to see him play at the end of his career, so I didn't really get to see or remember any Super Bowls. I was alive for 1 Super Bowl. I was a couple months old. I'm
the same because we're a month apart.
Right. So, but Troy Aikman is really kind of what started the whole Cowboy fandom. I had a Troy Aikman jersey whenever I was a kid. I dressed up as Troy Aikman for Halloween one year. And so it was just, I had a little plastic locker, a Dallas Cowboy locker in my room, and it had like little plastic shoulder pads and a helmet, and it had an Aikman jersey in it. My brother had an Emmitt Smith jersey in it. And so it's just kind of one of those things that it's more so just me growing up in a nostalgia nostalgic feeling, and he did bring the Cowboys to 3 Super Bowls.
Okay, and so my number 4, I'm not even going to go on about it because really you just covered it for me, would be Troy Aikman, pretty much for all the same exact reasons. I was raised a Cowboy fan. My dad's a Cowboy fan, so I grew up with just Cowboys, and so Troy Aikman, there was no way he was going to be in my top 5, so we can move on.
Yeah, and I'm going to go with my number 4 is your number 5 is Drew Brees.
That's really
Drew Brees
flip-flop.
Yeah, we did flip-flop. But like you said with Drew Brees, everything was against him, but the way he's gone about it and the fact that he still maybe isn't considered in a lot of people's top 5 all-time best quarterbacks list is absurd. I mean, he just broke the all-time passing record, and when you beat Marino, Favre, and Manning in your career, that's saying something. I mean, statistically, and he's a winner, and he's a great guy. He's done everything the right way. So Drew Brees is at number 4 for me.
He gets lost in the GOAT conversation, and he should be in there. My number 3 is a guy who didn't necessarily have a great NFL career, but it's going to be Vince Young. I mean, what he did for Texas is self-explanatory. He was arguably the greatest college football quarterback of all time. I mean, he was just – I loved watching every minute of his career. It was so much fun, and as a Texas fan, if Vince Young isn't in your top 5 list, you're either just doing NFL or forgetting about it because obviously beating that USC team that was considered the greatest college football team of all time, Vince Young was hard not to put up further on my list, really.
Yeah, well, and I'm with you, Jake, and he kind of made – I was a fan of Texas before him with Applewhite. I really liked Applewhite, hated Sims, and then Vince Young comes in, and he just really – he had that it factor. He had the Tim Tebow factor, you know. He had that factor of like he's just whenever he's on the field, you have to watch him play no matter what team you're rooting for in that situation. You have to watch Vince Young play. He was always doing something electric.
Yeah, and Colt McCoy, by the way, would be an honorable mention for me.
I was going to say honorable mention for Colt McCoy at the end of this, but since you beat me to it, we'll just skip that part.
Yeah, for both of us.
My number three is Brett Favre. Brett Favre was a quarterback that my dad hated growing up for me as a kid, but man, just when you play the game just for fun, I honestly, truly believe out of the one quarterback or one player in the entire NFL history of the game, this guy would have played for free. I really, truly believe Brett Favre would have played salary-free and would have just gone out there and played football because he just truly loved it. And he played that way. He was fun to watch. He was stupid. He was a gunslinger. He would throw it into quadruple coverage off his back foot across the field and it get picked off 20 yards down the field. He just was fun to watch regardless of how many bad plays he had or how many great, amazing plays he had. I always wanted to watch Brett Favre, whether that be in a Packers uniform, a Jets uniform, or a Vikings uniform. I always liked the guy. He was always he's a fun player to watch. He played the game a fun way, like a kid in the backyard, and I just always found that, you know, a good fun way to play the game. And with it being as serious as it is played now, I got to hand it to Brett Favre. He was one of my favorites.
Yeah, so my number 2, and I just kind of did a switcheroo on my list because once I looked at it, I realized I did it opposite of what I was thinking. But Roger Staubach would be my number 2. I mean, I own like a little DVD set of like top Cowboy games of all time, so I've seen several Roger Staubach games, and I mean, he's Captain America. He started America's team. No one... And just him as a person, he's just like what you would strive to be as a human being.
Yeah.
And then,
talk about doing it the right way.
Yeah, I mean, there's just nothing. Even if you're not a Cowboys fan and you hate the Cowboys, you have to respect Roger Staubach and what he did. He's one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time in college and in professional. Kind of funny enough, Lee Corso said that his top 2 college football players he's ever seen in his life is Roger Staubach and Vince Young. And I think that says a lot. And So Roger Staubach, I mean, a lot of it's self-explanatory. He's what you strive to be as a human being, and then his play on the field was just absolutely incredible. And he's a Cowboys quarterback. He was Captain America. Definitely in at that number 2 spot for me.
Yeah, Jake, and the only reason why I didn't add Staubach is, although I do have, old 70s games that I've watched, from beginning to end, and the only reason why I don't have Staubach is just because I didn't grow up with that, and I completely agree with you having him on your list. I'm not bashing you for it. I just didn't have him on my list because I didn't enjoy his career while it was going
right,
on.
And that's why I thought about not having him on the list. The thing about him is he's either going to be top 2 or he wasn't going to be on the list because I wasn't.
Right.
I just wasn't, because I was going to have a reason to not have him on the list, the same reason you said, or he's going to be top 2 because if he's going to be on the list, he just needs to be up there. I mean, just because of everything I just said. So I definitely get your point, but it was just something when I think of like my favorite quarterbacks of all time, and that's kind of how I decided to put him on there. I was thinking all time. That means, Roger Staubach always just comes to my mind. One of the first people to come to my mind.
Yeah, and well, my number 2, Jake, is a controversial one in the NFL world, but not in my head. I mean, this guy...
Not in any smart Cowboys fans' head.
And it shouldn't be in any Cowboys fans, and I think everybody knows where I'm going with it now, is Tony Romo, and he was the quarterback of my... preteen years, as soon as I was really starting to understand the game and really understand what real football and not just playing Madden, but really starting to study the game and how it should be played and what good play is versus what bad play is. And Tony Romo, he shared all of it with me. I mean, I learned everything I know from his really bad plays to his really good plays and the distinguishing the two and just from a studying of football play. Watch Tony Romo, man. He will teach you so much stuff. But very same reason why I really like Brett Favre was Tony Romo. And Tony Romo was compared to Brett Favre his entire career, and rightfully so. He should be. Had a fun time playing the game, always had a smile on his face no matter what. And he always
Ultimate
he was played injured, never got credit for playing with broken ribs, and never got, he was injured a lot at the end of his career, but never got credit in the middle and at the beginning of his career for playing hurt all those years and never missing a game all that much. But Tony Romo is one of my favorite quarterbacks of all time. He will always be up there. He's a Hall of Famer in my opinion. I'm going to say that right now. I think he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame regardless of postseason success. On the field, I mean, the only thing when I think Tony Romo, when someone says Tony Romo's name, the first play that pops into my head is the snap going over his head against the Rams, him picking up 20 yards, kicking it back even further for 30 yards, picking it up and running for a first down after that horrendous, what should be a horrendous play. He ended up running for a first down and ended up running 40 total yards. Actually, he probably ran 30 yards back, 40 yards up, so probably ran a total of about 70 yards in one play and got a first down by 1 yard.
Yep, and that brings me to my number 1, and this wasn't even a question for me, is Tony Romo. I mean, I was almost in pretty much tears when he gave his retirement speech because he's all I remember the Bledsoe days, the Testicle Verde days, and Quincy Carter, and
yeah.
I mean,
Chad Hutchinson.
Yeah, I remember those. So having Tony Romo was just, it gave me something, even when some of those Cowboy teams really sucked around him. It gave me something to look forward to every single week. I knew I was going to be able to watch someone that was going to make big plays and try to carry a team to victory. And I mean, that's the reason his back broke. Literally, to me, that's the because he had to carry the team. He had such a bad offensive line. He took so many hits. He always had to do everything for them to just win a single game week in, week out. He had to be what Aaron Rodgers is to the Packers, but for the Cowboys. And
he was blamed a lot for those 8-8 seasons, those 3 consecutive 8-8 seasons,
which is a joke.
What do you think the Cowboys would have been? Actually, I do blame him for that.
We've seen what they would be without him. Whenever they,
you know why I do blame him for that? Because we would have been 4-12 without him.
No, we wouldn't have been 4-12 actually, because 2 of those actually, I think 3 of those 4 wins that season were Tony Romo. The first game of the year, and then he played the majority of the Eagles game. He left. They had like a 2-possession lead, and they hung on. And then they won that Miami game when he returned. So they were what, 1-12?
1-12, I
One
think.
and
Yeah, that
1 and
makes
12,
sense.
1-11 without him. I mean that
with Kellen Moore and Sanchez or whoever the hell
and
the
Brandon
backup
Whedon.
was. Whedon.
They were the worst team in the NFL when they didn't have Tony Romo on the field. When they had Tony Romo on the field, they were a playoff contender and at points a Super Bowl contender. And unfortunately, the chips never fell their way, having to go against a New York team who went on to beat the Patriots in the Super Bowl, getting absolutely fucked by the refs in Green Bay at a game I was at and in Lambeau. And, I mean, Dez caught it. It took them 4 years to admit it because their head was so far up their ass they didn't want to get caught. But then they finally figured out their shit stinks and admitted it. But, I mean, to me, this wasn't a question for me. I mean, Tony Romo, I love Tony Romo. I love him as a person. I love what he did for the Cowboys. The Cowboys not winning a Super Bowl with him is by far the biggest failure in franchise history.
Yeah, Jake, and speaking of the main reason why Tony Romo didn't have a lot of success in the postseason is because of who my number one quarterback is, and my favorite quarterback to watch is Aaron Rodgers. And I know as a Cowboy fan, it hurts me to even say it, but every time he steps on the field, I have to watch him throw. I have to. Anytime I get a Packers game on TV, I'm watching it, and it's only because of Aaron Rodgers.
I'm revoking your Cowboys card.
That's fine. You can do that. I deserve it in every single way. He has taken away
He's not
a
on my
lot
list
of,
out of pure fucking spite.
Yeah, but he is so fun to watch. He is the only pocket quarterback who can scramble and the only scrambling quarterback who can throw it out of the pocket as well as he can. It is unbelievable what he can do. I've seen him getting sacked, and he was at about a 40-degree angle with the ground, and his knee was nearly touching the ground, and he threw it about 50 yards on a dime in double coverage right into his receiver's hands. I think it was Randall Cobb. It was the recipient for a touchdown. I've never seen it happen. I think it was against the Bears like 2 seasons ago. It was unbelievable. And this guy just can flick his wrist so lightly, and it will just zoom out of his hand for about 70 yards right into the pocket of his receiver. And it's unbelievable. Every time I watch him throw, I just am like, that is what it takes to be the greatest quarterback of all time. Yep. That is me. That is the sound of me jerking off. Actually, that's the sound of Jake just clapping his hands or doing something.
My
weird.
mic was muted. I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, Jake, let's move on to some of our talking points. That was our top 5 favorite quarterbacks. Jake had Drew Brees, Troy Aikman, Vince Young, Roger Staubach, Tony Romo. I had Troy Aikman, Drew Brees, Brett Favre, Tony Romo, Aaron Rodgers in that order. And Jake, speaking of Aaron Rodgers, he does it again on Monday Night Football in Lambeau. My favorite player to watch. Against, yes, the San Francisco 49ers. Don't care what Skip Bayless says about it. But Aaron Rodgers was just unbelievable. Unfreaking believable. Again, what he's able to do in the fourth quarter. Bringing his players back from he has nobody on his team anymore. There's a single good player on his offense except for Devontae Adams.
Yeah, they're not going to do anything in the playoffs again just because they are that bad. I mean, I'm surprised Aaron Rodgers still stays there. I mean, when he's having to do that to beat CJ Beathard, they're not a good team. I mean, the only reason to watch that game was Aaron Rodgers. That's really all
right.
My thoughts on it are. It wasn't.
It's
that
the
great
only
of a game.
reason to watch It's the only reason to watch Monday Night Football is because of Aaron Rodgers.
It was 2 bad teams playing, and one team had a really good quarterback. As far as actual football quality, I mean, outside of Aaron Rodgers, it was not good. But Aaron Rodgers. I mean, we've said more than enough about him, and yes, I'm saying that out of spite. But I agree with you. I mean, that he was the only reason to watch that game.
Yes, and in other news, the NBA is back, and NBA Twitter is the most annoying thing in the world. And really, at this point in the season in October, who gives a fuck about the NBA?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I checked the Spurs, their opening game. They won. DeRozan had a nice debut, 28 points, so that's nice. But, I mean, they're never going to be able to compete with, like, Golden State.
Does it matter?
Just none of this matters. Though the one thing I did look at and kind of enjoy whenever I was looking at the scores, because I just naturally look at scores of every sport every day. And I do really enjoy seeing that the Carmelo Anthony effect, the most overrated player in NBA history, effect is already taking over in Houston, and they lost by like 20-something points at home to the Pelicans in their opening game. Wherever Carmelo Anthony goes, losing either in the regular season or the first round of the playoffs ensues, and the Houston Rockets will not go past the first round of the playoffs this year. You heard it here first, because Carmelo Anthony, this might be another hot take to people, is the most overrated player in NBA history by far, and shouldn't even be a Hall of Famer because he's a loser.
He is a loser, and he doesn't put in any effort.
And the NBA, by the way, is a league where an individual player can carry a team. The NFL is not, because I know some dumbass is going to write in, oh, Tony Romo lost the game. He didn't go that far in the playoffs. I'm just going to be like, you're comparing two completely different sports, you incompetent dumbass.
Yeah.
Because I've had people say that argument to me.
Yeah, well, Carmelo is the most overrated player in NBA history. No, you know what? Fuck it. Carmelo Anthony is the most overrated athlete of all time in any sport ever.
Other than college basketball.
Yeah, that doesn't. I'm not adding that into his career.
I was just going to throw that in because, again, there's Carmelo Anthony apologists out there, and that'll just, hey, he won the national championship in college, okay, back in 1952.
Yeah, and Vince Young was a great quarterback too, and Tim Tebow was an excellent quarterback. Colt McCoy is a career backup in the NFL, but no one's counting him as a GOAT because he had the all-time most wins in NCAA history. No one gives a shit what you do in college until you're in, only when you're at college. People want to know what you do afterwards. But yes, Jake, we are going to have plenty of time to trash the NBA and
I had to get that out
talk
of my
NBA.
system, at least a little bit.
I'm the one that wrote it down on our talking points. I get it. I wanted to get it out there too. NBA Twitter, by the way, is annoying as well. I just need to get that out there as well, is that people who are actually like live tweeting games and like showing highlights already of the season. I know it's opening day, so I'll give it that. I'll give you opening day, but geez Louise. Come on, get over yourself. It's not ever going to compete with the NFL. Just get over it.
Yeah,
okay,
for the people who say the NFL ratings are bad, they outdo every sport, and it's not close. Oh, and by the way, the ratings came out for September. The top 15 watched shows in September were all NFL games.
Yes, because no one gives a shit about
anything else other than NFL. NFL is all that
baseball and NBA.
And college football.
No one gives a shit.
Football's all that matters, period.
Yes. All right, well, that was talking basketball. Let's move on to talking baseball. And, Jake, we are live watching the Astros-Red Sox game right now. You'll probably hear our mics be turning away just like I did there to check the game.
Yep, and the Astros are winning 7-6. Oh, wait, the umps fucking suck because they took away what was a clear
two-run
home
shot.
Run. And for the people who are going, well, the fan did kind of – well, in the rules – as long as the fan, it's basically kind of like driving. He is the right of way as long as he's not going past the yellow line, which not only was he not going past that yellow boundary, but the Red Sox player had stretched, Mookie Betts had stretched his glove into the stands, which at that point, that rule is not in place. It's a live ball in the stands, and it should have been a home run. And if the Astros lose this game by 1 or 2 points, it is going to be a huge controversy because that pretty much decides the series. Because if the Red Sox go up 2 or 3-1, this series is more than likely over. Not 100% over, but more than likely over. And that call was such a big call, and it was such a bad call. And the fact that baseball only has one camera angle pretty much is a joke.
Yeah, no, well, you kind of was about to go into my point there was that you can't have a camera on the actual like wall. You can't have it equal with the wall, just like the NFL has the pylon cam or whatever for reasons for that purpose right there. There's no way you can have a foul pole camera thing, whatever it needs to happen to be even with the wall right there, and have a perfect angle to see whether he was over the line or if the fans were over the line. There's not an angle out there. Are you kidding? This is 2018 baseball. Get it together.
And not only that, but this rule is really stupid because unless the fan is clearly just like, unless the fan is
they
clearly,
don't want the Chicago Cubs shit to happen again.
Unless the fan is clearly doing like something outrageous, all they did was essentially punish the batter who hit a home run and gift what would have been, even if Betts, there's no guarantee he even catches that ball if fans aren't there, because that would have been one of the most miraculous stolen home runs in baseball history. So instead of assuming that the 99% chance that was going to be a home run happens, you're like, nope, we're just going to punish the hitter, and we're going to assume that this guy would have made one of the most miraculous catches of all time in all sports. I mean, it was a terrible call.
Well, I think the rule is dumb that it counts as an out.
Yeah,
I don't think it should count as an out. I think it should count
be a ground rule double.
I think at worst, it should be counted as a strike, like a foul ball, and just put the batter back up there to go bat up again. That's the worst. Now, at best, it's a home run or a whatever, but I think it, like you said, a ground rule double or hell, a ground rule single or something that it's not an out, that it doesn't necessarily punish the fielding of the defense, and it doesn't punish the batter. If it's a neutral play like that, it doesn't need to punish either side of the because
or you can just use common sense, especially in this play where it was clearly going to be a home run. He was clearly more than likely not going to catch it, and it was clear that the fans were not reaching over the stands to stop him from catching the ball.
Yeah, I think it should count as a strike, just like a foul ball. If you have two strikes, you just start back up where you left off and you just hit it again. I just think it shouldn't be counted as an out. It's a stupid rule. I like the rule of fan interference or whatever to avoid the Chicago Cubs bullshit, although that was a foul ball too. That doesn't really technically matter all that much. But they were just going to make the game-winning out to win the World Series, and so they didn't, and then they lost. But anyway, let's go on, Jake. We could talk about this a little bit more. And oh yeah, MLB scheduling sucks. Why are you starting games at 4:09 on a Wednesday while everyone's at work? But anyway, let's move on to some college football, Jake. Tua was on Scott Van Pelt, and Tua said that Scott Van Pelt said, Tua, do you make any mistakes? Have you ever made a mistake out there in Alabama? He said, yes, against Mizzou, I fumbled. I got sacked. I had a crossing route right in front of me for about 5 yards. I was looking downfield to try to make the big play. Instead, I got sacked, and I fumbled, and I recovered the fumble. So his only mistake wasn't even a turnover. He just fumbled it and then recovered it and lost yards. So he got sacked. That's his one mistake.
Nick Saben brainwashes his players, and I mean it's exactly what I hate Alabama with every last ounce of my body. I mean,
we don't have to talk about this long. I literally just wanted to say. I just wanted to say that.
Yeah,
I just wanted to say that.
I don't want to talk about it long because I hate Alabama and the fact that it's I lost a fumble that I recovered, and that's the biggest mistake of my career.
And Jake, I know you're gonna want to give me shit about it, so I'm just gonna let you take the ropes on Nebraska.
Yes. So the what was reigned as the Big Ten champions by our own Tanner Carlson, Nebraska is sitting at a smooth 0-6 right now. And not only that, but they just blew a lead against a Northwestern team who's bad, and a Northwestern team who's been known this year for getting leads and blowing them. Well, Nebraska decided, let's blow the lead to Northwestern. They are, and I get it, you can't be like, it's all Scott Frost's fault, but at the same time, it has to worry you if you're a Nebraska fan with a brain, which there's not many of them that have that, but if you're a Nebraska fan with a brain and you say, okay, we were doing really bad, so we hired Scott Frost, and now you're doing the worst you've ever done in program history. They just look lost when they're on the field. The only chance they have for a win is Bethune-Cookman, and that is not a guaranteed win.
Bethune-Cookman.
If they lose that game, Scott Frost
That
should
sounds
probably
like a
be fired.
bad Disney movie. That
Yeah,
sounds like a bad Disney movie.
It does. I don't even know where they're at.
Like mid-2000s, like a buffoon cooker. Like he's like a cook or something. He's a chef, but he's a buffoon. And he's really dumb. And then he finally makes like a good plate.
That's
and
where
he beats
Baker
Nebraska.
Mayfield should have gone.
But Bethune-Cookman?
Yes. Baker would have been leading Cookman.
Oh, Baker.
Oh, wow. You're very slow.
I just got it.
It doesn't surprise me that you're kind of slow, dude. In fact, you picked Nebraska to be in the Big Ten championship.
And so Tyreek Hill had beer thrown on him during a game. And I'm going to say man card on this one. I'm revoking his man card. I'm taking it from him because if you get beer thrown on you as an NFL player and you want to press charges against that said fan, you just grab the beer and you drink it, or you get beer thrown on you and you just, wipe it off. It's just a liquid. It's not going to do anything to you. It doesn't hurt you. It doesn't do anything except beer is a fun time. And if you're punishing the man who's drinking beer, you're punishing beer. And that, sir, is unacceptable.
Yeah, I don't agree with pressing charges on it. It's just a stupid drunk fan, and you should just assume that. I do get that the Patriots are taking action, be like, okay, you're just not going to come to games because this is stupid, but it's just so Boston. He runs into the end zone, and all you see, Boston and Philly, the two ugliest fan bases in all of sports. I mean, you're running into the end zone, and they're just all middle fingers, swearing up a storm and throwing beer on them. I mean, that's just classic Boston, which I can't blame him for being so angry because it gets like -10 on average up there, but
yeah.
You just have to live an angry life at that point. But yeah, that was just I could watch that video over and over. He's scoring a touchdown, he's all happy, and he just runs into an end zone and middle fingers, calling him who knows what, and then beer in his face. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, and honestly, you could just drink.
And why the hell would you waste the beer if you're that guy?
Yeah.
That's like a $50 beer.
Whoa. Spin zone. Tyreek Hill might be pressing charges on the fan for wasting beer.
Ooh. Tyreek Hill could make this to where he becomes a hero.
It's alcohol abuse by the fan because he's just pouring out good alcohol.
I can get along with this. I think Tyreek Hill should come with it. I think even a judge likes beer. I mean, we've heard about that in the news lately.
Hey,
but,
let's not get on that subject.
That just that flowed too well together.
It did. And so,
you get the point. I'm saying is he could definitely use this in his advantage.
He could definitely spin zone it and make me like him. But for now, I'm taking the man card away because you don't disgrace beer, and the fan pour on you as well for throwing the beer. Anyway. So, Jake, let's go on to your second segment. Let's end the show off with this. The Dallas Cowboys, Jake, had an anomaly, and they destroyed the number one, quote-unquote, defense in the league. They beat the Jacksonville Jaguars 40-7, a 33-point victory for the Dallas Cowboys, and what was the most dominant win since 2014 when they played the Colts at home and destroyed them like 46-3 or something like that. It was something ridiculous. And Jake, you're going to break down Leighton Vander Esch. You're going to break down the rookie linebacker, first-round pick for the Dallas Cowboys. But just a little bit, let's talk just very briefly about the actual game itself. And I just wanted to say that they will lose to the Washington Redskins on the road this week, and because everybody's so high on the Cowboys all of a sudden that they played so great and that they finally figured out their offensive kinks and they're going to go out there and play great. I think they're going to lose to the Washington Redskins 13-17.
Yeah, I think they're going to lose. I think they'll score more than 13 points, but I think they're going to lose the game because they're destined to be 8-8 because the coaches have two different playbooks. They have a home playbook and an away playbook.
And an away playbook,
And the away playbook is an old 90s style football that we've complained about on this podcast every week. And then the home playbook is let's get Dak running. Let's play action. Let's open up the run game for Zeke by switching things up and by doing read options and doing exactly what I think this offense should be doing. And that Jacksonville game was basically just them all of a sudden taking the playbook I've been begging them to run and doing it. And people can sit there and say, well, the execution was better. Well, the execution was better, but you can't sit there and say that they weren't calling a completely different style of game. And if you're going to, and I guarantee there'll be people who pull out the one or two plays that look the same. But overall, the amount of read options, the amount that they got Dak on the run, it's just
Dak
completely
also
different.
took it upon himself. Dak also took it upon himself much more where the play broke down and he ran on his own and it wasn't a designed run, which I think he needs to take responsibility more so and be successful like we saw against Jacksonville.
Yes.
Not all of it was designed runs, just to be clear, because the coaches have done a shitty job, but Dak has taken a lot of scrutiny too for not making those decisions. He finally made those decisions and it worked.
Yeah, and basically here's my thing on the Cowboys right now. I'm going to stick with that they're going to be like a 7-9, 8-8 team. I will not get any hype for them unless they win against Washington and Tennessee, because those are two games if they're going to be a decent team, they should beat these next two teams. And
Agreed.
I think they have the defense for it. The question is the offense going to do anything consistent? Are they going to show up on the road? At this point, I kind of trust the offense when they're at home. Because they haven't lost a game at home, but unless
5-3 at the bye.
But yeah, I think is there a bye in between those games? Either way, they need to win their next two. If they're 5-3, I'll start to get some hope.
It's a bye week. I think it's a bye week 9 after the Tennessee Monday night game.
Yeah, so I mean that's the only way I'll start to get any hype back towards this team. So that's kind of where I'm at, but. I'm just going to go ahead and move on unless you have something else to say.
No. Cowboys suck still. Not buying into it.
So basically, how I'm going to do this film segment moving forward, I'm just going to pick a player. I'm going to try to do quite a few rookies because those are the guys we know less about, and it's not just going to be Cowboys.
One thing, sorry. Michael Gallup, believe it or not, I'm walking on air because
if you
I don't know how the hell
pylon camera view of him.
I don't know how the hell he doesn't go inbound. I mean, he jumped from like 20 yards. No. It's just he's too athletic.
Yeah, I love Gallup. I still think he's going to be a really good player.
Okay,
but
now you can go back to
So,
LV.
anyways, I'm going to be doing. I'm just going to pick a player. So this week I'm doing Leighton Vander Esch. Next week I'm going to be doing a certain quarterback that was taken very high in this past year's draft. You're going to have to tune in next week to hear that spotlight.
Ooh.
But Leighton. So I decided to do Leighton Vander Esch. She's the first round pick for the Cowboys this year. He's out of Boise State. Not a lot of really true football experience. His background, he played in high school. He played in, 6-man, I think?
It's 8-man. It's 8-man. I read an article today on cowboy.com. It is 8-man. I said 6-man a couple weeks ago, but it is 8-man.
Yeah, I shouldn't have trusted you. But, yeah, so 8-man, and then in college, he didn't really play much until his final year. So he has, pretty much just one regular true football season under his belt. And so a lot of people kind of dogged on the pick when they took him. I didn't because I thought I liked, just athletically, physically, and from, the progress you saw him make in the year where he played every game. I liked what I saw. But so I basically just looked at every game. I kind of just tried to make some quick notes, and I'm just going to kind of go through those. And so one of my favorite things about Vander Esch, and especially as he's progressed along the season, his first step is your first step as a linebacker can really determine how that play is going to go for you, because if you step the wrong way or you just kind of stay in place, you're already behind the play, especially in the NFL where everything happens so quick. Vander Esch does a great job of using his eyes to make that first step and already be in a position to set himself up for success. So I think he reads and reacts very well. That kind of goes along with the first step. And then he just doesn't look like a rookie out there. And Pro Football Focus released their top rookie linebackers where they rate him. And he was over 5 points better than the second best rookie linebacker right now. He was graded out at like an 86 point something, which is absurd. And, I mean, that just shows how well he's playing even in other people's minds. He just doesn't look like a rookie mentally, which I think would have been the number one concern for him. And then physically, we knew he was kind of a different animal.
Huge. He's ginormous.
He's really fast, and he's huge. And he kind of looks
his
like
size
Thad
is that
Castle
old
from
school
Blue Mountain State.
Yeah, that old school type of
Brian Urlacher.
linebacker. Yeah, a very, very old school, very tall, very big. You're seeing these linebackers nowadays where they're almost shorter and just fast and lean, like a Telvin Smith type of guy.
Yeah, and he's just the purest tackler I've seen in a long time in the NFL, where it seems like what kind of goes along with the safety is the fundamentals of tackling are just not taught well enough at lower levels of football, because people just go for shoulder hits and just try to go low and put their heads down. No one actually goes through the tackle anymore and wraps up. And that's just something that's kind of been lost over the last several years of football, is true form tackling. And, man, this guy, he wraps up, and even when you think there's no way he's making this open field tackle, he finds a way to bring him down. For a rookie, he misses hardly any tackles. I mean, he's leading the Cowboys in tackles right now, and he hasn't even started every game. That's absurd.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Jalen Smith is playing extremely well too,
and he's
and
second.
So right, he's second. But just to show that, like, Jalen Smith, he was a first year starter last year, missed his entire rookie season, and then Van Der Esch is a rookie playing in his first season. So you've got a guy who's played 2 seasons and a guy who's played 1 season.
And some people are saying Jalen Smith is a possible Pro Bowl type linebacker this year.
Well, he's playing. I mean, look at his coverage. He's taking Odell Beckham 60 yards down the field.
Yeah, and look at Leighton Vander Esch in coverage. I mean, he has been fantastic in man coverage. I think in zone he can improve a little bit as far as just actually using his eyes to read and moving kind of with the quarterback, because right now he does look a little lost sometimes. But the thing is, he's so athletic, he's so fast, he has such great acceleration that it doesn't really cost him. I mean, he's able to make up for it with his athletic ability, but in man coverage, he's been lights out. He made one play on a 3rd down and 5. Bortles threw a pretty decent pass in man coverage on a receiver, and Leighton Vander Esch looked like he looked like Byron Jones out there swatting the ball down. And the only play where he really got beat in man coverage was when, for some reason, he had to guard D.D. Westbrook. And trust me, I've seen D.D. Westbrook play up close and personal against my high school defense, because he played in my district senior year.
You were on the sideline while he was
thankfully
playing.
I didn't play defense, or I would have been made just look silly. But he
retweeted one of my tweets one time.
Yeah, he has 10 kids, too, with different moms.
Yeah.
All back in camera.
I mean...
But, yeah, I mean, that was the only
Can
play.
you blame him?
We're not going to get into that, but before we get probably thrown off YouTube for sexism. But I mean, that's the only play where he got really got beat. But I do think he needs to get, kind of areas he needs to get better. I think he needs to get better with blitzing. Whenever they've sent him on blitzes this year, he just hasn't gotten much accomplished. He hasn't really forced any quarterback pressures. He just works better when he's just flat out playing the regular scheme. But I think blitzing is just going to get better and better as it goes on, because a lot of that's about timing. A lot of that is just about getting used to the physicality and the trenches down, especially in the NFL.
Yeah, does he get swallowed up in the trenches? He's a big guy, but there's a difference between being a big body and then knowing how to get off your blocks.
So in week 1, yes. In week 2, a little bit. Since Sean Lee got hurt, no. He looks like one of the best linebackers on the field when he's out there. I mean, you can tell he's quickly adapting to the speed and the physicality of the NFL. And he's not a guy who struggles with strength and physicality whenever he does meet a lineman at the point of attack. He is definitely able to shed blockers and stop a play for 4 yards that would go for 10 if he remained blocked. That's not something that he struggled with. I mean, at the end of the day, I think this...
Well, Jake, let me ask you real quick. Where do you think his ceiling is, and where do you think his floor is?
So I think his ceiling, quite honestly, is he has a chance to be an all-time great Cowboys linebacker. I mean, this is a guy who has a chance to be an all-pro. His ceiling, if you want me to compare him to a player, his ceiling is Brian Urlacher. I mean, he is showing that level of promise And, I mean, there's neutral. You can go out and you can fact check me on stuff, and there are neutral analysts who are singing the same praises that I am. And, I mean, his ceiling is that high. He has a chance to be a Hall of Fame type linebacker, and I think his floor is just being a very good starter that goes to some Pro Bowls, but maybe doesn't reach that like Hall of Fame crazy type level. But
right.
I mean, I really do think that's his floor, unless he gets injured and something changes his
If
career.
there's-
But as long as he,
So do you think floor wise, and I know this guy size wise does not match up the same size, but like a London Fletcher, like someone who's just a solid linebacker,
has some years
always.
where he's thought about in that elite category, but then has some years where he's just, he's good. Yeah,
He's okay.
I would actually, that's a perfect comparison. A physical freak that has some amazing years, but then has some years where it's like he's good, but he's not like top 3 linebacker in the NFL. So yeah. I think that would be a great example of what his realistic floor would be, assuming nothing catastrophic happens.
Yeah, and that's saying no injuries.
I mean, he's been
and,
good enough to where Sean Lee's starting to come back this week, it looks like, and he's good enough to where they need to be rotating consistently because he has earned playing time. And
I
even
think
having Sean Lee on the sidelines, which is crazy to think about with this defense,
Right.
because they've looked like one of the best defenses in the NFL with Sean Lee in past years, and then one of the worst when he wasn't in there. And they haven't
Right.
missed a beat without Sean Lee, and that is any person who actually keeps up with the Cowboys. That is wild, and that shows how good him and Jalen Smith, especially those two other guys like Joe Thomas, Wilson, they've been good, but these two guys have just been on a different level so far this season.
Well, the best thing for Sean Lee right now, Jake, is honestly how well LVE is playing, but it's kind of scary if you're Sean Lee too, because the best thing for Sean Lee right now is to not play as much as he is needed to play, if that makes any sense. I mean, he needs to be rotated out. Like you said, he needs to be on a rotation base, maybe on a 3rd and long situation where he's more so in coverage because that's where he excels, where an important play on the game where they need to make the right read. They have to make a right stop or a right read, and so you put your smartest, most experienced linebacker out there in Sean Lee. But if it's a situation where it's possibly more of an open field situation and it's a more physical play, you got to put LVE out there. You have to know situationally when to play these two guys, because if Lee gets hurt again, he may be done as a Dallas Cowboy. I'm going to be one of the first people to say that Sean Lee's future with the Cowboys, with LVE playing as well as he isn't that bright anymore. Not with him getting as hurt as he gets. It's just not. And he's at the point in his career too, Jake, where he's given everything he's gotten to the Cowboys. He's given everything, and we appreciate what he's done for us. But it might be time to move on from Sean Lee if he continues to get injured.
I don't want to completely have this conversation until at the end of this year because so much can change. But I mean, Sean Lee next year is going to be about $8 million against the cap, and his contract structured to where the Cowboys can get it to where it won't hit the cap hardly at all, if at all. So, we'll see what Sean Lee does the rest of the season. But if he's not performing as well or he gets hurt again, I do think he would be more than likely on a different team next year, because you can't have a guy hitting that much against the cap if you're not going to be playing him much, or if he's just going to be hurt for most of the season. So it'll be interesting to see. I mean, Sean Lee is still Sean Lee. He's still a guy who is just a brainiac when he's on the field and is going to get the defense.
I'd love him to be a defensive coordinator.
Yeah, I mean, he's just a guy who's going to get the defense in the right positions when he's on the field. And so
who
I'm
I could see
certainly
him kind of
excited
being
to
like?
see him coming back. So I'm not just going to be like, oh, yeah, because, if this team did miraculously defy my expectations and make the playoffs or something, that's where you're really going to want a guy like Sean Lee who has experience in the playoffs, as opposed to just completely relying on a rookie.
Well, right, and I also think he kind of, where I think he might go like career-wise, I mean, not just with the Cowboys or wherever he wants to finish his playing career when his playing career is done, I see him being a Mike Vrabel. He could possibly start off as a linebacker coach, move up to defensive coordinator, then become a head coach for some shitty low-market team and just be an intense guy, an energizer type of head coach or whatever, and just he's not that type of player, but I could see him being that type of coach.
Yeah, for sure. And, again, I'm not going to really move on to seriously talking about all that because it's kind of almost an overreaction. Wait, not about Leighton Vander Esch. I really do think he is going to be as good as advertised. I think he already is. But, I mean, with Sean Lee, 3 weeks ago, it would have been like, oh, no, we need this guy on the field. So I'm not ready to just throw him into the dumpster 3 weeks later.
No.
I mean, I'm excited for him to come back.
Am I.
They are a better football team whenever they have Sean Lee active and playing.
Yes. Don't make it think that I'm more frustrated with his injuries year after year after year after year, more so than I am his play. Trust me, he's the best linebacker in my lifetime. And DeMarcus Ware, to me, was an edge rusher. He's not a linebacker. I mean,
no, he's not a linebacker at all. He's a pass rusher.
Yeah, he's a pass rusher. So the best linebacker of my lifetime is Sean Lee for the Dallas Cowboys. And so, I mean, I don't want to take anything away. Yeah, no,
I still love
5'7". Yeah, 5'7" little shit. Yeah, we should have gotten. There was a. I think there was a tight end available instead that we got. I think it was like Tony Gonzalez. We decided to go Datwin instead or something like that in the draft.
And Tony Gonzalez, so I'm just gonna.
Yes, you can.
No,
you can. Aaron Hernandez and Rob Gronkowski, dude.
Oh, yeah,
it worked out great for the Patriots.
And a child walking to a bar. Awesome.
So, but anyway, Jake, that is our show. As Jason Witten would say, we pulled that one out of our head. And thank you, everybody. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. We are the Fanboys. We are fans talking as fans for you, the fans. Thank you, and good night.